great to be here again, and thank you so much. I know my husband and I keep repeating that, but we mean it with our whole heart, and thank you very, very much. Since we just started Adar and we are headed toward Purim, I felt that I would like to address the very unusual and confusing and a little bit frightening idea of Amalek. What is Amalek? What does it mean to us? So the Torah gives us two primary sections where Hashem actually tells us what he thinks, and it is the springboard for us to begin to understand what is going on. So, of course, in Shemot, in Exodus, we find in chapter 17 at the end, Hashem says to Moses, write this as a remembrance in the book and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I shall surely erase the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. Moses built an altar and called its name, Hashem is my miracle. And he said, for the hand is on the throne of God. Hashem maintains a war against Amalek from generation to generation. Those are strong words, very, very strong words. In Deuteronomy, there is a little bit more detail, and we find it in chapter 25, at the end of chapter 25. We find as follows, remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you were leaving Egypt, that he happened upon you on the way, and he struck those of you who were hindmost, all the weaklings at your rear, when you were faint and exhausted, and he did not fear God. It shall be that what Hashem your God gives you to rest from all your enemies around in the land of Hashem your God, gives you as an inheritance to possess it. You shall wipe out the memory of Amalek from under the heaven. You shall not forget. Again, these are very, very powerful words, and they're very, very often misunderstood words. So what I would like to do today is first try to understand together, what is Amalek? What is Amalek? And I would like to understand why Amalek is such a desperate enemy. The nation of Israel has been up against worse enemies. If you think about it, if we go through what we see of Amalek in the Tanakh, we had to deal with Lavan. And it says in the verse that Lavan wanted to destroy everything. Everything. We had to deal with Paro, and we can go on and on. So we really want to understand what is different about Amalek, what is Amalek, and most importantly, because we know everything in the Torah is a lesson that lives forever, we want to understand what this means for us today. So, of course, we want to look at what Hashem himself is telling us when he's giving us some details in Deuteronomy. The first battle of Amalek was in Rephidim. Rephidim was the stop before the nation of Israel got to Chorev to receive the Torah. And if we look at the verse, Hashem is spotlighting certain ideas for us that he wants us to contemplate. And of course, what we're going to do now is we're going to take it from the historic perspective and into the very personal work that this means for us. Okay? So if we start off, we see the first thing is when you were on your way. Okay. You were on your way. You were going somewhere. The next thing is it was a surprise. It's korcha. In the Hebrew we don't see it. In the English we don't see it. Only in the Hebrew, korcha. It was a surprise attack. The next thing we see, and all of this is coming from the end of chapter 25 in Deuteronomy, if anybody wants to follow along. It's the hindmost. That means the weak stragglers in the back. And when you were exhausted at your most vulnerable point. And bottom line, he did not fear God. Okay, so we have the beginnings of understanding why Hashem is so insistent that we cannot tolerate whatever Amalek is. We don't know yet what this is. Whatever it is, we cannot tolerate it. Okay, so throughout Tanakh there are little glimpses of Amalek, this nomadic nation, non-nation, whatever we want to call it, little glimpses, and because of time we're not going to go there, except for me just to mention it very quickly. One, of course, is the Amaleki youth, which actually killed King Saul. And what was the Amaleki youth, who was not a soldier on either side, doing on the battlefield? This was a practice of Amalek. They were scavengers, scavenging the battlefield for spoils of war taken from the dead and dying. And there he was. Okay, just a little glimpse. Then, of course, we have in 1 Samuel chapter 30, we have what happened in Ziklag. In Ziklag with David, and they rescue this Egyptian slave. And you could read there and see how he was left for dead, and he explains that his Amalek master threw him away because he was ill. So he was useless, and he was thrown away. So, these are just a few glimpses to begin to understand what the composite sketch of Amalek personality is. It's ruthless, and cynical, and we will see as we progress exactly how this goes back again to us. So the second battle of Amalek, if the first battle that the Jewish people had with Amalek was as they were becoming, they first left Egypt on the way to Horeb, on the way to Sinai to receive the Torah, total slaves, total slave mentality, total weaklings, just brand new babies starting off on their walk. That was the first attack. And the second attack that is recorded in the Tanakh, even though there are allusions to the fact that Amalek was a constant source of challenge to the nation as they spent their 40 years in the desert, the second attack, unprovoked, totally, happened in the 40th year, just as they were about to step into the land, and right after Aaron dies. Again, a very, very vulnerable point for the nation of Israel. Their beloved Aaron left them. The clouds of glory, which were protecting them, left them. It was the perfect time. They were vulnerable again. They were vulnerable emotionally. They were on the verge of something new, just like they were on the verge of something new, leaving Egypt, all new, going to Sinai, and now again on the verge of something totally new, going into the land without their precious leaders. Again, a very, very vulnerable time. In steps Amalek. And something that we're going to need to examine together, what's going on here. Now, there is another battle that is a famous battle against Amalek, and we find that in 1 Samuel chapter 15. And this battle is, of course, the famous battle in which King Saul did not live up to what Hashem expected of him. And because of that, because of misplaced mercy, he lost the kingdom, because you cannot be a leader with misplaced mercy. Nevertheless, knowing the compassion of the Torah and the acceptance of the Torah and the ability for any single person to change and to grow and to be accepted, this whole business with Amalek and wiping out Amalek and the whole memory of Amalek, it's without studying it with the oral tradition, it is impossible to understand what this means. Otherwise, we take it to a very, very wrong place. God forbid, of all these genocidal aspirations that we see around us in the world, which is having absolutely nothing to do with what's going on here in the Tanakh. And so, as an important understanding of, maybe to illustrate what I'm trying to say, the Rambam, Maimonides, he talks about the laws of engagement in battle in the land of Israel. And he says that it is a prerequisite to any battle that we wage against any enemy, including Amalek, that before we go to war, we extend our hand in peace. Including Amalek. This is the Rambam, including Amalek. Now, we have to understand what this extending the hand to peace means. It's certainly nothing that is, self-destructive as what we call, quote-unquote, peace today. What the halacha is talking about when it talks about peace for in order to prevent war with Amalek included, or any of the nations in the land of Israel. Again, we're talking about in the land of Israel, where such a battle would take place. Basically, what it is that we extend the hand to these people to become autonomous residents, taxpayers, part of living in the country according to the 7 laws for man, which is the foundation for any just and moral society. That is the extending of the hand in peace. So basically, the only time that battle is waged, and in the case of Amalek, it's waged to the end, and we will begin to understand what it means that we could blot it out totally and have no mercy. We have to understand what this means. The only time that we actually go through with the battle is when the enemy clings to the desire to undermine us spiritually and our physical security. Then we have no choice but to do battle. That's it. We never just, we don't start a battle with anybody. That is not the way. That is not the way. And even when we were commanded to go in and wipe out the nations in the land of Canaan, it was all with this program, extending a hand in peace. Peace means you can live here or you could leave. You want to live here, you are residents. You are residents that are bound by the Constitution, which is the 7 Noahide laws for a moral and just society. There is no such thing in a Torah mindset ever that anybody is doomed because he's from a certain nation or because he came from a certain place. There's no such thing. And it's very, very important for me to clear this up because a lot of people do not understand that. Now, the Talmud even goes so far as to say that the grandsons of Haman taught Torah in Bnei Brak. It's an incredible thing. It's an incredible thing. So we have to start to rethink. That means when a person is able to leave Amalekism, and it's free choice, and it's if he doesn't, then it's a war to the death. Absolutely. Absolutely, and we'll see why it's different than a war against Egypt or a war with Lavan. Why is it different? But that's how it is. And Rav Kook, the beautiful Rav Kook, of course, says that the ultimate beauty, he said it's fitting for the humanity tonight as the family of man. And that really is the Torah approach, that we can all unite under the Torah as a family of man. And so there is something about what we will study about Amalekism that has no place with us. We want to understand what it is and why it has no place. Now, when we go back to, again, I don't want to go into details because I would love to spend the time, but that's not going to be happening today. So when we go back to the very famous battle, the very misunderstood battle with King Saul, the battle is in chapter 15, and it looks like it's this offensive battle, and that there was none of this, what I just said about the calling to peace and anything else, and we have to really know what we're looking for. And when we understand that chapter 15, when the prophet calls Saul to battle, comes after chapter 14, and you go back and read it, which is the continuation of the battle that is taking place, and the nation of Israel is trying to overcome what is going on there. Now, again, let's let's go and see now with a little bit new eyes. Let's go and see. I'm going to be reading from Samuel. Here it is, 1 Samuel 15. And it says as follows. It says, Vayirev banachal. Vayirev banachal is verse 5, chapter 15. And it is commonly and mistakenly called, and they battled at the riverbed. And I think here also that is because that is the common understanding without. Here, Saul came to the city of Amalek, and he fought them in the valley. Now, but when we look at the Hebrew, vayiriv, a riv is always a verbal battle, a verbal argument. We see it with the shepherds of Avram and Lot. Riv is with a mouth. It's not with a sword. And so what was going on there, that was exactly the verbal confrontation, negotiations, calling for peace, that is required as a prerequisite for going through with the battle. But look and how do we know, I'm not just saying this, it's a nice way to fit it in and make it happen. Let's read what's going on. Okay, so it goes as follows. Where am I? Okay. Saul had all the people summoned, and he counted them through lambs, 200,000 infantrymen, and the men of Judah were 10,000. Saul came to the city of Amalek, and he fought them in the valley. Saul said to the Canaanite, "Go withdraw, descend from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them, for you acted kindly to all the children of Israel when they went up from Egypt." So the Canaanite withdrew from among Amalek. Saul struck down Amalek next. So Saul didn't strike down Amalek before, because now he did after he told the civilian population to leave. Because once again we see Amalek hiding behind human shields, behind the civilian population, and they were asked to leave. So again, we have so far from what we've seen, we see Amalekism as something that preys on the weak, that devalues human life, uses human shields, has no Geneva Convention, no ethics of battle, sneers at compassion, and is very aggressive. The second battle that they waged as the nation of Israel were going in at the 40th year was over a maidservant. They swooped down and they took a maidservant. And then Israel goes with a vengeance. I mean, we can negotiate. It was just creating aggression for the sake of aggression, to instigate, to foment. And that was what was going on. Having said all of this, the Amalek that we are talking about, and as we will see, is not really so much a nation or a person as much as a mindset, an ideology. And let's go back again to the first battle that was waged against the nation of Israel, the new nation of Israel, in Rephidim. As with everything, the Hebrew language is very, very rich and helps us understand the text. And that's why studying in the original Hebrew is the only way to go. Otherwise, we really, really, most of the time, miss out on so much, not only between the lines, but we miss out the actual understanding itself. And when we go to the first battle, as the nation was leaving, we see that the battle took place in Rephidim. And Rephidim shares the same root as the Hebrew word Rifayon. Rephidim, Rifayon. It's the same root. And this basically means helplessness, Rifayon. Hopelessness, feeling at a loss. And so what was going on, the nation of Israel even said, they wanted this water, and they said in this in verse 7. In verse 7, they say, is Hashem with us? Im ayin. Im ayin. It's not if or not. Now remember, this is the newly released slaves on the way to Sinai. This is a very heavy thing. They've never had to take responsibility. They've never had to think for themselves. They were never free. And what they knew was what they knew forever, and it was what they knew, and it was safer almost than this whole new thing that they didn't know. And so they're about to get the Torah. It's a major life change of responsibility. It's a tremendous. The way of thinking is totally foreign from everything that came before, and it's a frightening moment in its way. It's a vulnerable moment in its way, and the whole thing was about water. But when someone overreacts, they're not reacting about what's going on. I mean, why would they worry about the water when Hashem has provided for them and He opened up the sea and everything else that was going on? Because it wasn't really about that. There was a lot. There was tremendous emotional turmoil that they were going through. And what ended up happening was that they had this unbelievable crisis in faith, because they had nothing to hang on to yet. So they said, is Hashem with us, or im ayin? Is there nothingness? Is this futility? Is there anything worthwhile here? Could we really do this? Where are we going? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And into that moment of absolute doubt. Everyone knows Amalek in Gematria is doubt. Everyone knows about that, and it's very nice, but let's take it deeper. So in that actual moment of doubt steps the king of doubt, which is Amalek, because it was a reflection of what was going on inside of them. They were about to have this unbelievable rendezvous with God, which would change their life forever. And it was a very, very frightening, doubtful time. And Amalek honed in on that and tried to totally pull it down. And when we take the name Amalek, it breaks into two words, Am-lak. And it literally means a nation that sucks you dry. What is it? Again, it's a nation, an ideology, a mindset that sucks you dry, that plays on insecurities, that takes you away instead of toward. It diminishes the capacity to create, to believe in yourself. It expands fear, doubt, anxiety. So I would like for us to understand that Amalek really is an internal tape recorder that instills fear, that undermines, that creates doubt and despair in our relationship with God and in our relationship with ourselves. So it's sabotage for the sake of taking you away from what you could be. They have nothing to gain. Amalek, when Hashem is saying when you were leaving, it said that Amalek came from far away. Usually when we talk about Amalek, when we talk about battle, they use different wording. They use the wording of vayavo instead of vayetze. It's usually vayetze, you go out to battle. Vayavo, they came from far away. They needed nothing. It wasn't about their security. It wasn't about their boundaries, their borders. The people were weak. They were unarmed. There was nothing that was nothing that was hurting Amalek. Nothing that was challenging Amalek. There was nothing for them to be gained from this. Nothing for them to be lost from this. It was sabotage, just so that something shouldn't come good into the world for somebody, or for a nation, for a people, for the world, just to stop up the positive from coming. That was it. That was all there was. Sabotage for the sake of sabotage. So the nation of Israel is about to come to Sinai, and basically the Amalek message is, you're small, you're incapable, you can't meet God, there's no such thing, it doesn't happen. And it's more than that, it's an inflexibility of thought. Everything is black and white. And in Ovadia, chapter 1, verse 3, there's a verse, an interesting verse. It says, "You who dwells in the clefts of the rock, who can bring me down to earth?" So what the oral Torah says there, it's talking about Amalek, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esav. That the Amalek attitude is, he says, what is this with Sinai? What is this with a personal relationship with Hashem, that includes responsibilities? He said, you can't bring me down to earth. There's nothing that we could do on this earth that makes a difference to God. There's nothing important about this world. The mitzvot, the deeds. I don't need to do that because I am Amalek, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esav, the son of Yitzchak, who already did it for me. And that's incredible. That's another Amalek attitude. So the nation of Israel was attacked baderech. Baderech, they were on their way. And this is like a spotlight. Derech, the time of being on your way transitions, thresholds, exploring, moving a little bit outside your comfort zone. Anytime we're trying to move out of our personal Mitzrayim, Egypt, Meitzarim, narrow place, when we are trying to put our head up a little bit and take a breath of fresh air and believe in ourselves, revamp, reorganize, move forward, that is the expertise of Amalek. Attacking us at the time that we are in transition. So this Amalek psychology is something that we are extremely vulnerable to, actually, when we're moving, when we're going somewhere, when we are beginning to actualize our potential. Okay, so, and not only that, the modus operandi, as it says in the parsha that I quoted, the modus operandi is a surprise element. He attacked you from behind. And again, this is another important psychological factor because we are on our way and we think we're doing a great job and we're proud of ourselves and we think we have hope finally. And we're out of the blue. We have no idea how these thoughts came into our head, and suddenly we're tearing it all down and doubting ourselves and throwing it away. And that is, again, Amalek psychology. That's the modus operandi, the surprise attack. So it's an Amalek moment. Amalek moment is any of these self-defeating thoughts or feelings or choices that are taking us away from who we could be. Taking us away from our relationship with Hashem. And because a relationship with ourselves is a relationship with Hashem, and vice versa. If we don't develop ourselves, we can't develop anything. We can't develop a relationship with Hashem. It goes together. It's a set. Bilam actually calls Amalek in Numbers 24, verse 20. He calls Amalek Reshit Goyim, the first of nations. And in Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 3, the nation of Israel is called Reshit Tvuatcha, the first of your wheat. Okay? So this is very, very interesting. They are both Amalek and Israel are called Reshit. And this has to make us stand up and wonder what's going on. And what's happening here, again, this is a spiritual face-off of Reshit versus Reshit. And of course, when we hear, even those who are not so familiar with the Hebrew language, when we hear Reshit, we hear Bereshit. Bereshit bara Elokim. Hashem created, of course, in the beginning Hashem created the world. However, in Hebrew, Besides that simple explanation, which of course is true, Bereshit, in the beginning, there's another way in the simple text to understand what this means, and this is Bereshit. With Reshit, Hashem created the world. With Reshit. Which one? We just said there are two. And so what's going on? Because the fact is that what did Hashem create the world with as a necessity? Free choice. Free choice. Hashem created the world with free choice because a free choice is a necessity, a right, a responsibility, and actually it's a prerequisite to any growth or any movement. If I am not choosing passive, things are happening to me, I'm not making anything happen, that is not growth. Growth is not possible. And so, actually, there is a force that has been put into creation in order to enable free choice. And without free choice, we are not people. We cannot be people. So all roads lead to Eden. I always say that because I always look again and again and there's always more. We go back and, the Talmud has this whole question and we've discussed it a little bit yesterday when we were discussing about Esther. But, how do we know Esther from the Torah, Mordechai from the Torah? But we're focusing on Amalek. And so in the same area of the Talmud, it says, and where do we see Haman from the Torah? Where do we see Haman from the Torah? And it says they go back to verse 3 in Bereshit, and it says Hamin ha'etz, chapter 3 in Bereshit, and it's verse 11 as follows, and in Hebrew. Here it goes. Hamin ha'etz asher tziviticha lebilti achal mimeno achalta. So he says, have you eaten from the tree from which I have commanded you not to eat? But in Hebrew it's hamin. So it's spelled like Haman. But there are better places. There's actually the word man, which is the manna. There are so many other places. This is almost silly. It's almost silly. And so we have to understand why the Talmud is using this as the source, the root of what we call Amalekhood, Amalek thought. Again, we've moved. It's not about a nation. It's not about a people, because we said it. We pointed out in the beginning that anybody could choose to move away from being Amalek. There's no such thing in Torah ideology as genocide. It's not about Amalek, the nation. It's about Amalek, the mindset. And that can be present in any one of us at any time, and is part of what is infused into creation in order to enable us to take a stand for growth, for becoming a real person, for bringing Hashem's light into the world. So the source that they use is Hamin ha'etz. And this was really the primal challenge, because remember, Hashem created the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom runs on instinct. They don't do good or bad. They do. It's very robotic. They were, they care for their basic necessities of survival. And, the animal kingdom might be a harsh place, but the human kingdom is an evil and cruel place. It's a very, very different thing. So the animal kingdom is its own category that is based on instinct. And the angelic category, there's no such thing as an angel with wings. When we say angel, we're talking about a spiritual force that Hashem also created, which is a messenger or a servant of Hashem, also without free choice, also totally robotic. It has no choice. Hashem says, do A, and it does A. Hashem says, this is your mission. It completes its mission. There's no choosing involved. So just like with the animal kingdom, the angelic kingdom cannot grow. There's no growth. It's static. Static. Human beings, on the other hand, as Hashem's crowning creation. Crowning creation, because we have free choice. And the conflicting voices in us, the Reshit versus Reshit, is what it's all about. It's what it all has to be about. And so when we say Hamin Ha'etz, from this tree, we're not talking about a man, we're not talking about a nation, we're not talking about any of that. These are all personifications of people or nomadic tribes that lived with this, were in this way, but it's much, much, much deeper than that, much more all-encompassing than that. So it's a psychology. It's a psychology. So we need to have this Reshit versus Reshit. It's a kindness. It's a prerequisite, because without it, there is no possibility to have free choice, to grow as a person, to worship Hashem. It has, in order to confront our lives, we must have it in place. And when Hashem gave Adam and Chava in chapter 2, verse 15, he hands them this beautiful garden, this beautiful world, and he said, all this is yours, la'avda u'lishamra, to work, to cultivate, and to preserve. It's two different actions, cultivation and preservation. It's two different things, and he gives it to all. He gives them everything, all of it, and he says, except not that, not that. And so what is that? You can have it all, but not that. That's exactly what you want when you say not that. You take a child to a toy store and you say, you see all these rows of toys. I was in Toys R Us, it's big. All these rows, take anything, but not that. You can know that that's the one the child wants. So what is this? What is going on here? Hashem is not a cynic. Hashem is not trying to trip us up. And we have to really understand why Hashem is saying not that. Because that was the ignition. That was the spark. That was the challenge. That was how internal conflict came into being, because without choice we would be robots. We would be absolute robots programmed for something, and that means any service of Hashem, any good deed that we do, any mitzvah that we perform is meaningless. 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 If we were all little computers and we did it, think about it, meaningless, meaningless. So if we could say the snake, we could say Amalek, we could say the Yetzer Hara, these are all interchangeable terms that are actually part of us. Always, in potential, part of us. And it's not because we're bad. It's not at all because we're bad. It's not at all because we're flawed. It's because we can be wonderful. And this, in a nutshell, is Torah ideology. It's not because we're bad. It's because we can be amazingly great. And so we must have this conflict within us. So we can rise to be who we are in potential. So Chava bought the argument. She ate from the tree. And when we discussed this, a while back at a different time with a different subject matter, why she did it. And she did it basically because the Nachash said, you won't need God, you'll be God. And it was so enticing to be, this ego thing. I could be totally self-sufficient. And that really is a Amalek voice, this egocentric voice that I need to be in a center. I need to be independent. It's nice to be independent, but everything in its boundaries and where this was coming from is independent of God. So, so there was this. They get this beautiful place, and the snake is actually trying to get Chava into trouble. And she's trying to, at first she really is very valiant, and she says, no, we could have everything, but just not this. Like she's really in this dialogue. She's trying to go with it and she's trying to lick it. But basically what gets her, let's see, where am I? Let me look in the Hebrew because I'm not finding it. Here. So it says, Mikol Etz Hagan. It says like this. You can eat from everything. Amar Elokim, Lo Tochel Mikol Etz Hagan. That means there's everything but one. But one. And this is where this dissatisfaction. Why not? I want that too. I want everything. I want to decide what I want. I want to decide when I want it. And it was this dissatisfaction, and we see the same trait in Haman, in Esther chapter 3, verse 11. It's the same exact trait. Now remember, this trait can be present in any of us. Surprise attack. It's a life's work, and this is the trait. Okay. Okay, I don't want to spend the time looking for it. I lost my place. But basically, Haman comes home and he's talking about how great his life has become, that he's so important, Achashverosh made it important, he's invited to this, and Esther wants him there, and Esther and Achashverosh, and he's number one in the whole world, basically, because Achashverosh was king of 127 provinces, 127 countries, and he says, Aval kol ze enenu shaveh li. He said, but none of this is worth anything because of Mordechai. It's worthless. He couldn't appreciate, he had all this richness, all this power, all this greatness, all this, everything on a silver platter. He was it, and he says with his own mouth, none of it's worth a thing because I want that. Just that. And it's the same exact voice, and this is a voice that we need to pay attention to in our own brain, in our own heart. So, but again, the flip side of someone who is arrogant and egocentric is very, very often, not always, but very, very often, it's a mask, like a Purim mask. It's a mask, a thin veneer of inadequacy. A person who's very arrogant and out there and aggressive is very often a person that doesn't like himself very much, doesn't think very much of himself. So it's the flip coin, and we will see this because the Amalek voice, it seems like a split voice, but no, it's the two sides of one coin. It's the voice of, it's all about me, and I want this, and only me, and no God, and all, and I want to be in control. But it's also the voice of doubt. I can't, it's not going to work, it can't happen, who are you? God's not listening, he doesn't care. So it's the same trait, but the flip side of that trait. And why this is so dangerous? Why this is so dangerous? Because when we wear the mask of arrogance, we, because of insecurity, we can't do any self-examination, and without self-examination, there is no growth. And so, this is a perfect Amalek setup. And that's what Hashem wants us to watch for. Remember, not forget. Remember, not forget, because this is about our lives. And so, Adam and Chava choose at the moment the Amalek voice, and immediately there's chaos. Immediately there's a man against man. He starts blaming Chava. She starts blaming the snake. There's chaos. There's distancing from Hashem. They're hiding from Hashem. They leave Eden. They don't have the vessels anymore to be that way. And the environment is changed, and now there are thorns, and there's work, and everything changes. Everything falls apart. Everything falls apart, but nobody did it to them. They did it to them. And that's the thing. That's another thing. We've spoken about this. I know my husband has spoken about this many times, about the measure for measure concept, that Hashem is not zapping us. We do things to ourselves. When the nation of Israel didn't go into Israel, it's because they wanted to stay in the desert. We do these things to ourselves. And, when we sit like little children in the corner, like blaming God for everything, it's very convenient because it takes away personal responsibility. So, but what we do have to remember, it's true that there was discord and blame and competition and ingratitude and pain. All this came into motion from making the Amalek choice. Everything came into motion in Eden from making the Amalek choice. But we have to also remember, without this ability to create chaos and to be so self-destructive, we would not have the ability to build and to create harmony and beauty. So it's almost the job of the Nachash, because it's the Yetzer Hara, and we actually need it. We need it. And we need it in order, for the reasons we said, because this is what creates free choice. And so we even see that when we read in Deuteronomy, as I quoted in the beginning, in chapter 25, when it says, remember what Amalek did to you when you were on the way, and how the surprise attack when you were on the way, Vayezanav b'cha kol hanachashalim. Do we hear nachash? Does we know nachash means serpent? So there's an illusion right here that we're not talking about. This is not like you put an X. You were going to exterminate a people. What? That's not Torah. It's not Torah. So instead we see it's an ideology that those people in the Tanakh did embrace. And, when we see in the world that we live in, that when we are, just so forgiving of monstrous acts by people that embrace monstrous ways of being, we are siding with Amalekism and bringing more of it into the world. This is current events. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. But here we see, it says, Vayezanev b'cha kol hanechashalim. Kol hanechashalim. And it is translated in English, all the weaklings at your rear, which is what it means. It means the weaklings. But the word is unmistakable. There are so many ways in Hebrew to express the idea of weakness and vulnerability. And this word nachashalim really doesn't exist anywhere else. So it's basically saying this goes way back to the beginning. So, and we actually see it. Hashem says, in Genesis chapter 1:28, ridu. He uses the word ridu, which means govern over, which means be in charge of. Ridu, that you are going to be master of this world that I have given you. And then we see that when they choose an Amalek viewpoint, an Amalek moment, the result, not the punishment, the result is that thorns will grow from the ground. And the verse in chapter 3, I think it's verse 15, check it out, it says thorns and thistles or something like that, but in Hebrew it's kot v'dar dar. It's the same word. Ridu, that means you take control of your environment, which is the blessing, or dar, the thistles and the thorns, same exact word. And then when Hashem says it is a battle with Amalek, midor dor, when the verse says the battle of Amalek, midor dor, from generation to generation, over there in the verse, the vavs are missing. Dor is usually spelled daled vav resh. But the way it's it's spelled here when Hashem, when these verses warning us that this is a battle for all generations, of course, because it's inside us, this battle, in potential. Of course, it could be outside us as well, which we see in the Tanakh, but it's outside us because it's inside somebody. It's an internal battle. And so when we see here that the battle is waged eternally, midor dor, it's the same exact as dardar, the thistles, or redu, which means you take charge, because if you don't take charge, the thistles take charge. And then, of course, we get to Amalek and Purim, Adar, Aleph, Dar. Is it Hashem, the one who lives here? Are we going to bring that into focus? Who has put us here to preserve His world, to cultivate His world. So we are basically told, we remember, Hashem says, remember the creation, remember going out of Egypt, remember Amalek. It's pivotal moments which all boil down to Reshit versus Reshit. The battle of the spirit that is taking place in Hashem's creation in order to allow us to bring His light here. Hashem doesn't need it. He gave us this ability to rise to godliness in this material world. And He set the stage for us to be able to do it. Will we always do it? God forbid not. But can we do it? Absolutely yes. So when this very strong language of blotting out these toxic seeds, it's because, if anyone who studies like cognitive therapy or mindfulness, this devastation within starts from these little seeds that go into this domino effect that just bowl us over when we're not prepared. And it's up to us not to be distracted or confused or be undermined. And no one else is going to do that but ourselves. And that's why we have to remember and not forget. That's why we have to be examining ourselves again. And so the thing is that, it was about, like Moshe, it's such an amazing thing. In that first battle against Amalek, Moshe is standing there with his hands raised high. It's a strange thing. It's a strange thing. And you don't really see something like that. Hashem doesn't need His hands to be raised high in battle, for this to happen. And it's talking about how he got tired, and when his hands went down, Amalek was victorious, and so they put the rocks under his hands to hold his hands up, and they were holding his arms, and this whole thing, it's a very dynamic and interesting, I don't know if you've ever thought about it, it's a very interesting concept. And basically, Amalek's whole thing is, you can't do it, you can't affect change in this world, mankind cannot do actions, we're worthless, we're hopeless, we're sinners, we're dirty, we're nothing, and that is Amalek attitude. That is Amalek attitude. And that means you can't do anything. So Moshe is holding up his hands, not because it's for us to remember that we can reach for the stars, we can do this, but there in that battle, it's being expressed as this challenge that's going on. It's not simple. And when you lose hope and you become lethargic and you say, I can't do it, the other voice in you is going to come up. The other voice of you is going to raise its head. And it's always this seesaw. So it says that, Amalek's hand is on the name of Hashem. Ki yad al keska, yad al keska, on the throne of Hashem, as it were. There's no throne. These are images for us to understand. Yad al keska. So the hand is on the throne. And what does this mean? There's a hint in the verse to what it means. Hashem's name is not spelled out, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey. It's cut off. It's separated. It's cut away from itself. And that is what Amalek ideology does. It disconnects us. Why? Because the Yud Hey is about thought, feeling, innate potential, and the Vav hay, which is the straw that pulls from top to bottom, which includes us, which connects us like an umbilical cord, that's about speech and action, revealed capacity, actualization. And that's what they're blocking out. Don't become something. You can't become something. It's worthless in this world to become something. So it's disconnecting us from who we can be. And when we have those kind of voices inside us, we know what we need to do. We need to know what it is and how to deal with it. So in Proverbs chapter 24, it says, Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam, that a righteous person falls down 7 times and gets up. And what makes him righteous is the getting up. Falling down is fine. Falling down is fine. That's part of life. We will be falling on our faces periodically and often throughout our lives. And that is fine. But the ability to get up after again, and I'm angry at myself, and why did I do that, and I wish I would have done that, and where am I going with this? The getting up is what makes us righteous, and that is that ratzon, that will, that strength to get up is the antidote to the random Amalek. It's random, why bother, who cares, it's not possible, look at you, you're a nothing. That is the Amalek voice. So the greatness is in getting up. And the fact is that utilizing the fall is what we're saying, is the greatness. That means the falling itself is what actually gives us the material to rise up. So it's not like this random, why'd I do that? No. This happened, I didn't want it to happen, what can I learn from it about myself, about my environment, about my relationships? How am I going to use this? And then that whole fall becomes totally transformed and elevated into something very, very different. So we are using our humanity. Our humanity is an asset and it's not shameful. Now that is a very basic and important understanding to take home. So, in the Garden of Eden, disaster strikes, the choices are made, the results are quick to come, and they stumble and they fall, and they blame themselves, they blame each other, and they ask, where's God? They're hiding, they can't see Him, they can't be with Him. And what is most amazing, because, very often people say, where's God? Where's God? Or, no, there's no God. And at this moment of this, terrible crisis, Hashem steps in and He says to them in chapter 3, verse 9, He says, Ayeka, where are you? Where are you? He puts it back in their lap. And this is a beautiful thing. This is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Because they just messed up so royally. But he's, where are you? And you have to ask that question to get somewhere. So I bless us that we repeatedly ask ourselves that question. And thank you very, very much. Amen.